Welcome to the Oopaloopa Cafe, a place where storytellers gather, where old sailors relive their travels, where shamans and mystics reveal their esoteric secrets, where mammoth are hunted and cave walls are turned into art galleries. Some visitors here bring the detective skills of Sherlock Holmes. Some bring ancient tools found in the backyard. Some bring insights into how ancient people lived, loved, died, and were buried. Much of what you will see and hear in this place you won't find in a history book, but you should. This is the Oopaloopa Cafe, where the heroes of old come alive and legends live again. A place where history is exciting. A place where adventures begin. Come with us and explore.
And welcome to the Oopaloopa Cafe here on the 18th of January 2013. I'm your host, Rick Osmond. Today, as always, we have some great features for you. One of the features that's coming up here in this section comes from Amidst the Noise. I don't know the gentleman's real name, but he talks some pretty good sense. And then, of course, we also have our Temerity Magazine folks coming up later on, as well as our feature for today, which is part 2 of Dennis Crenshaw's 5-part series regarding the secret diary of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Now, Byrd hit both poles more than once and has had a number of legends built up around those adventures. We also have our Off the Wall today, and as every day. And Off the Wall is, of course, a short video that just, I don't know, kind of struck my fancy. But you can submit your own video for Off the Wall, whether you produce it or whether you recommend something that was done by someone else. That's okay with me. Also, we have an interesting, I'm not sure compelling is the right word, but certainly interesting, intriguing, perhaps even depressing video that I got from the new HollowEarthInsider.com, and it is also at the end of this segment. We also have The Broker and the Artist. Jay and Eric have done a really good job this time around, and they had a ball doing it. And they will be talking about the new trailer which has been released regarding the new movie Star Trek Into Darkness. You really can't tell much from a trailer, but you'll get to see the trailer as well. A number of things have happened in the last couple of days that are political in nature. We'll touch on them just a little bit, but we also will be looking into history and archaeology. One important story comes from Australia and India. Yeah, an archaeology story from both those places. Oh well. I'm going to put on my new dingo boots, I think. Anyway, for the moment, let's go to Amidst the Noise. I think you'll enjoy this one, but you're going to have to watch your spatulas.
This is an assault weapon. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, no, it's not. It's a spatula. But in 2010, a spatula and other kitchen utensils were used by a Utah mother to bludgeon her daughter to death. So this was a weapon. It was used to assault. So it's not inaccurate for me to call it an assault weapon. However, it's absolutely ridiculous because millions of people use a spatula every day to cook their food. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about words. I'm talking about language. I'm talking about labels. Labels are not value neutral. They all have some type of value associated to them. And people that create messages, marketing people, politicians, media, know how important these labels are. They know how powerful labels can be. So there's a lot of thought put into naming something. But specifically when we see that they're trying to play around with the label, know that they're playing around with your emotions. So let me give you some examples of labels that are used in politics, specifically policy. So let's go back to before the Iraq War and the great label that the Bush administration came up with. It was weapons of mass destruction. And mass destruction had a particular emotion attached to it at that time because we had just come through September 11th and we knew what mass destruction was. So when we heard that, weapons of mass destruction, we can make the connection that there's some guy in a faraway place that wants to use weapons of mass destruction against us. So it has a certain emotional connection to us. And the people that come up with these words, they know this. This is why they come up with these words. Let's also look at No Child Left Behind. I mean, how do you argue against that, right? Are you the guy that says, yes, I want to leave children behind? The Obama administration's the Affordable Care Act. I mean, what do you say? No, I don't want care to be affordable. The war on drugs. I mean, what's the opposition? I want to hug it out. So these labels make it very difficult to have a conversation, a discussion about, what the item is. They're typically, a lot of these labels are used to divide us. They're not used to bring us together. And it's important to note that. And what I'm seeing going on right now with gun policy, I mean, that's been going on for a very, very, very long time. And one thing I notice a trend with it is the labels make it very hard to have a conversation about violence, about what makes people turn to violence, ultimately resulting in murder. Let's get to the problem. But these labels prevent us from talking about that. So for an example, let's talk about semi-automatic rifles. And originally, and we still do call those semi-automatic rifles, but they've had different labels attached to them. Assault rifle, assault weapon, weapon of mass murder, and weapon of war. And let's just talk about weapon of war right now. So when you see a label change, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. What's the value of the new label? Why did that label change? And what are the implications for that label changing? So what are the values of that new label? Weapons of war. What kind of emotions does war bring out? Violence, fear, people die, something we want to avoid. War is a last resort. It's undesirable. Most people are against it. So when you see all these emotions that war brings out, and then you see weapon applied to it, you can assume that that weapon is going to bring all those emotions to you. So it's something to be afraid of. Why now? Why change the label right now? Well, it's pretty clear to me. If you are trying to promote a policy that says it's going to make you safer, the first thing you have to do is convince you that you're not safe. So when you take an object, an item like a semi-automatic rifle, and you attach this label to it, and that label carries all of these emotions like fear, like it's undesirable, then that's the first step for a politician to come in and say, I can make you safer. But they created the illusion that you weren't safe in the first place. So what are the implications of changing that label? Well, first, weapon of war limits the use of that item to a very narrow focus. So you're saying you can't use it for self-defense. You can't use it for sporting purposes. You can't use it for hunting purpose, for competitive purposes, for just target shooting. So it limits its focus outside of anything except those emotions that you've attached to it. Second, it prevents us from discussing anything other than the focus of the label, the tool, the item. So it makes it very difficult to have a conversation about what makes people turn to violence, because that label is focusing only on this tool with a very specific function. Yet, that item is used very little in crime. Third, who wages war? I mean, historically, who has waged war? The state has waged war. So by giving it the label weapon of war, in essence, that label is saying no civilian should have access to this item. This item is a weapon of the state. And that's something to think about when you're relabeling items. There's a lot of consequences. These are extremely powerful tools. And these people that come up with these labels, they know it. And they're trying to pull at our emotions. They're trying to pull us in a certain direction. And it prevents us from having an overall meaningful conversation about what the root causes of violence are. This is fertilizer. This is a box cutter. Timothy McVeigh used this. The 9/11 hijackers used this. We didn't relabel these because we know it was the people that were responsible.
Well, I think the dog should go into politics because he's actually making more sense than most of the stuff we're hearing coming out of Washington. At any rate, there are a number of features coming up in today's show that I think you'll enjoy. I know that I have had a pretty good time and some tough decisions pulling them all in. This one was kind of a rough decision because it makes a lot of claims that, I don't know, I can't debunk. Just watch.
Obama regularly disregards laws he disagrees with, including the Constitution. But one would think he'd want to obey regulations found in his signature achievement, the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, specifically forbids doctors from asking about patients' firearms in the home. Specifically forbids the creation of a database for this type of information. Quote, a doctor may not require the disclosure or collection of any information relating to the presence or storage of a lawfully possessed firearm or ammunition in the residence or on the property of an individual. None of the authorities under the Affordable Care Act shall be construed to authorize collection of any information relating to the lawful ownership or possession of a firearm or ammunition. Yet in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy, of the 23, quote, executive actions proposed by Obama to combat gun violence, many of which are oddly connected to health care, two completely countermand his own regulations. Executive Action Number 16. Clarify that the Affordable Care Act does not prohibit doctors asking their patients about guns in their homes. Executive Action Number 2. Address unnecessary legal barriers, particularly related to Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, that may prevent states from making information available to the background check system. Other than the fact that Obama's executive actions directly countermand his own regulations, what these doctors as agents of the government amount to is a secret police that rivals the Gestapo, rivals of the KGB. Let us think about this for a moment. Virtually everyone goes to a doctor. So questions about guns in the house, primarily regarding access by those with mental health issues, will be asked of literally every adult, every teenager, every child in the nation. It is not only those with quote-unquote mental health issues. Virtually every military veteran who has served in combat Whether he or she has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder or not could be deemed as having a mental health issue. What about postpartum depression of women who have recently given birth? This and PTSD could easily, but falsely, be proved. What about a child who tells the doctor that mom and dad have been arguing? Would this be considered a mental health issue? And it is not only individuals who are living in the home. What about an uncle that suffers from depression who comes over for Thanksgiving once a year? Or what about a neighbor that you invite over for coffee once in a while? The neighbor says she's been depressed lately. Would this have to be revealed to your doctor? So now we see that Obama's executive actions are nothing more than a ruse to create what all Marxists desire, a repressive, totalitarian state under constant surveillance. And that requires a disarming of its citizens. The communists in Russia confiscated guns. "Citizens, turn in your weapons," this propaganda poster reads. Apparently, now it's Obama's turn.
Well, I don't know. Those changes to the medical parts are definitely in the executive orders. Can't really speak to the rest of it. But stick around for segment 2, because upcoming in it are the stories regarding the Aborigines and the ancient Indians getting together, as well as Temerity Magazine. Stay with us, Oopaloopa Cafe.